It all started with a camping trip, a chance to escape the city's relentless hum and unwind in the embrace of nature. Deep in a forest a few hours from town, I'd pitched my tent at the end of a challenging 4-hour trail. After a night lulled by the symphony of crickets and owls, I noticed a narrow path snaking away from my campsite. It wasn't marked on my map, a solitary thread beckoning towards an unknown destination. But with nothing but the whispering wind and rustling leaves for company, I decided to take a chance and see where it led. Maybe it would open up to a secluded pond, a cascading waterfall, or some hidden gem tucked away in the emerald embrace of the woods. Packing a backpack with enough provisions to last longer than planned, just in case this forgotten trail stretched on further than expected, I set off down the path. The deeper I ventured, the clearer it became that this path wasn't well loved. Nature was reclaiming its space, with dense foliage encroaching on the path, making it narrow and overgrown in sections. The silence was heavy, broken only by the occasional snap of a twig underfoot or the flit of a startled bird. There were no signs of recent visitors, no footprints, no discarded wrappers, nothing. This isolation stretched on for miles, the trek eating up a good 2 hours before I finally reached the path's end. The sight that greeted me wasn't what I'd anticipated. Instead of a scenic vista or a hidden body of water, there stood a solitary house, or perhaps more accurately, a cabin, nestled amongst the trees. One look and it was clear this place had been abandoned for quite some time. Moss and clinging vines clung stubbornly to the weathered wood siding, and the doors and windows hung open like gaping wounds. Before approaching any closer, I took a cautious look around, a shiver crawling down my spine at the unnatural stillness that hung heavy in the air. It felt wrong, unsettlingly so, like the forest itself was holding its breath. With a mix of trepidation and morbid curiosity, I inched towards the doorway and peered inside. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight filtering through the broken windows, coating everything in a thick layer of neglect. Debris littered the floorboards, the only furniture long gone. Venturing a little deeper, the stale air inside reeked of mildew and rotting wood. Each room I crept through revealed nothing but emptiness, the silence broken only by the echo of my own footsteps. The deeper I ventured, the more a growing unease gnawed at me. It was a feeling that went beyond the typical creepiness of an abandoned place. There was something about this cabin, something about the way it sat there in the stillness, that sent shivers down my spine. Just as I was about to turn back, a glint of silver caught my eye. It came from one of the closed wooden doors, a brand new padlock, gleaming out of place against the weathered wood. The doorknob had been ripped clean off and replaced by this solitary guard, its shiny surface a stark contrast to the decaying surroundings. Curiosity piqued, I found myself wondering what secrets this locked door held, what treasures or horrors might lie hidden behind it. But the more I stared at the padlock, the more that unsettling feeling intensified. An invisible hand seemed to squeeze my heart, a primal urge to flee taking root. Ignoring the insistent voice of caution, I knew I wouldn't be able to rest easy without knowing what lay beyond that locked door. But a strange sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air, and for the first time, I questioned my decision to venture this far off the beaten path. "10 years ago, back in high school, a buddy of mine, let's call him Jake for privacy reasons, and I stumbled into an experience so bizarre, we haven't spoken about it until now. Honestly, we're still not entirely sure what happened. For a while, this abandoned mall on the outskirts of town had been calling our names. The only snag? We were nervous about venturing there alone. It wasn't exactly a place known for sunshine and rainbows. But the lure of the unknown was just too strong, and we found ourselves unable to resist. So, we grabbed a backpack, threw in some essentials, and hopped in Jake's car. The mall sat discreetly off a busy highway, hidden from view by a thick curtain of trees, a deliberate move by the state, we figured, to keep the eyesore out of sight. The access road itself was a wreck, forcing us to park the car discreetly on the shoulder of the highway, nestled amongst the trees. With the sun starting its descent, casting long shadows, we set off on foot. The fading light provided just enough for us to navigate the wooded area. Soon, the sounds of traffic faded away, replaced by an eerie silence as we reached the edge of the vast, empty parking lot. The abandoned mall loomed in the center, a hulking monument to a bygone era. Nowhere was a car, a person, or a sound to be seen. We paused for a moment, a tense silence hanging heavy in the air, before cautiously stepping into the deserted parking lot and making our way towards the main entrance. The glass doors lay shattered, gaping wounds offering a glimpse into the inky blackness that lay beyond. Stepping inside, we were instantly swallowed by an even deeper darkness. We moved slowly, staying quiet, our senses on high alert. Exploring this colossal structure, devoid of life and light, was an unsettling experience. Every footstep echoed through the cavernous space, amplifying the silence that pressed in on us. As we ventured deeper, the darkness became absolute. Reaching into our bag, we pulled out our flashlights, their beams slicing through the gloom. Suddenly, a sound pierced the silence, a laugh. Echoing from the depths of the mall. It was a chilling sound, devoid of any context, followed by an unsettling silence. We exchanged a worried glance, both assuming it was another group of explorers like ourselves. But the encounter left a knot of unease twisting in my gut. We weren't exactly thrilled about the prospect of company, but turning back after coming this far felt pointless. Switching on our flashlights, we plunged deeper into the darkness, the beams illuminating the empty, graffiti-covered shells of stores. The sun had dipped below the horizon by now, and even the path back to the entrance was shrouded in darkness. As I turned to update Jake, I noticed he'd stopped walking, his flashlight beam fixed intently on something ahead. "Jake?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Following the direction of his light, I saw it, a figure. It stood motionless by the entrance of a store, its gaze fixed squarely on us. The sheer eeriness of the situation sent a jolt of terror through me. Why were they just standing there? Why no greeting, no attempt to approach? With each passing second, my heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to burst from my chest. Finally, Jake slowly moved his light away, and without a word, we both turned and started walking briskly back the way we came. We swung our flashlights wildly, the darkness pressing in on all sides, our echoing footsteps the only sound breaking the suffocating silence. Reaching the mall's entrance felt like a victory. But just then, the sound of running footsteps erupted from the floor above. I flinched, catching a fleeting glimpse of a figure sprinting down the hallway before it disappeared. That was it. We didn't need any further encouragement. We broke into a full sprint, heading straight for the exit, the pounding of the footsteps growing louder behind us. Bursting through the doors, we didn't stop running until we reached the safety of the trees, our lungs burning. Looking back, the deserted parking lot offered no sign of pursuit. The walk back to the car was a blur, my stomach churning from the adrenaline rush. Finally collapsing into the car seats, we sped back to Jake's place, the events of that night replaying in our minds. We haven't spoken about it since. To this day, we have no idea what transpired that night. Who were those figures? What were their intentions? One thing's for sure, if we had lingered any longer, there's no telling what would have happened.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like and comment.